Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm gonna start to share my screen. So you should be able to see the mind map now that I created for today's webinar. So I can show you how we use mind mapping to create strategies for us and our clients. Maybe before I dive into that topic, a little bit about my background and the company that I started. My name is Dori. I am from Vienna, Austria. I studied software engineering, and for some reason, I somehow got into marketing after university. I did an internship in Singapore, and I really enjoyed working for that agency, which was basically a full service digital agency. And then I spent a year there working for some really great brands with some really great people, and then moved on to New York, where I spent another year working with even more fantastic creative people and exciting brands. In 2016, I decided to start my own agency, which is called Anwert. It's a German word for added value. And that's what we're trying to create for our clients. Our clients are mostly tech companies because that's where my background is, since I studied software engineering. And what we provide is design. We create logos, branding, a lot of infographics, UI, UX. We do websites, e-commerce, or just plain business websites. We also offer the hosting and everything you need in the ongoing marketing, like SEO, performance marketing, social media, and so on. We try to, I think we're doing a really good job in getting things done faster than other agencies for a very fair price with a way above average quality, and try to do that in a very personal way. And I think that's what we're best at. We're approaching people who are looking for, like, the companies we work with often just happened to start like 20 years ago as a technology company, and they grew and grew, and now it's time, or whenever we step in, it's time to get a proper marketing strategy. And then we sit down with them face to face and do a mind map to really get an understanding where they at, where they want to go, and how we actually get there. And that's the topic for today, the marketing strategy and how we put that into mind maps. So usually we do a first get to know each other over coffee, just to see whether we're a good fit for each other. And then once that coffee meeting, it's coffee meeting because Vienna is really big on coffee. And once that meeting has went well and everybody agrees to move on, we start into an analysis session where we sit down between 2 and 4 hours, I would say, to make people aware where they at actually, and also discuss and bring everyone on the team onto one page. And that first session, that is 2 to 4 hours, is the analysis session, where we talk with people about whether they actually know about all that and whether they made a decision on all these things, in which environment they're actually working. So what are the markets? Is it just one country? Is it an entire region? What are the trends in general in science, in society, in pop culture, but also in the legal field? Like, for example, there are European regulations that are coming into effect, like the European Accessibility Act, for example, which is a burden for some and an opportunity for others. So we make sure that people actually are aware of all these things and that we know what they already know. In addition, of course, beyond that first session, we do our own research and analysis and see what we can do in terms of research that the clients haven't done yet. We also need to make sure that people are aware what kind of budget and skills and time and content they actually have. So that's often budget is something people mostly know, but skills and time, on the other hand, is tricky. Like they know that few people, for example, know how to manage social media, but they don't know really how much time they actually can invest in managing those social media channels. Also, in terms of content, I'm not sure how many people really know what content they already own. Like, for example, they know that there is some content on the website, but they don't know if it's outdated. They know they have a folder, but they don't know from what time and whether information is still up to date. So we need to make sure that we do a proper content inventory to see what's actually there already. Then we see what the competitors are. We ask the clients what they think their competitors are. Most of them actually know. Some only know the biggest one or two. And then, of course, we also do our own research with competitor tools to see whether we can find any other competitors. And the strategic fit, because the marketing strategy is just one part of the entire business strategy. We need to make sure that there is a fit. So if there is a strategy, hopefully there is, most of the time there is, then we need to make sure that everyone is aware of that and that the marketing strategy is aligned with that overall company strategy. So that's usually the first session, and we always use mind maps during those sessions to just take notes. We usually it looks something like that, and then we ask people, so what do you think your markets are? And then they say, well, it's Germany, it's the US, it's the UK. And then we just start to type that in and put that into a mind map. Most of the time, actually, people are really fascinated because they barely get such a great overview of all their marketing efforts and strategy and where they actually stand. Often it's either hidden in their heads or in some PowerPoint or Word documents on some cloud storage. And barely people, not very often people get a great overview of everything at once. So once we are done with that analysis, we start with the formulation of the marketing strategy, meaning the analysis is everything that we cannot really decide. So the resources that we have to work with are the resources, the market is the market, trends are trends. It's nothing that we can influence or where we can make a lot of decisions. But the strategy itself starts with the brand, of course. Who are we as a brand? What are our values? What's our mission? What are we trying to achieve? Where do we want to go? What's the vision? But also, what's our brand's personality? Are we outgoing and excited, or are we more of a guide who just tries to help without being too annoying? And what are the benefits that we're actually trying to provide to people? When it comes to the personality, I really like the archetypes, the 12 archetypes by C.G. Jung. That's where we try to make people choose one or two personalities. It's not that it's set in stone, but it often also creates a new perspective on, or it's a great way of describing actually the way a company engages with their customers. Then also, of course, part of the brand is the verbal aspects, like the tone of voice, again, derived, of course, from the personality. So are we trying to be formal, informal? Are we trying to be funny or not? Often people would like to be funny, but it's actually really hard. So if you don't have the resources to create funny copy, that would be That's going to be hard then, but the decision can be made. What's our core message? There should only be one core message. What are we trying to achieve? What we also try to encourage, or what we're also encouraging our clients to do, is set up a vocabulary, like a list of words that we're using for certain, to describe certain features, things, or circumstances. What punctuation style or capitalization style do we want to use, and how do we use, or how do we proceed when it comes to gender and inclusion, especially important in German, because you have to distinguish between male and female. It's less important in the English language, but still there are decisions to be made. And that's what we also try to do in advance before we start any communication. Then, of course, there's the visual aspect of a brand with the logo, the colors, the fonts, all the design elements, like decoration. What kind of images and illustrations are we using? And are we using any animations at all? And ideally, everything mentioned here and even more is properly collected in some sort of brand guide. Could be a Notion page, could be a PDF, anything where it's documented. It seems really obvious if you have a logo lying around somewhere, and of course you have colors on the website, but you really need to describe how colors and logos and fonts are to be used, because not everyone is a natural with these things, but often people have to work with a logo, upload that somewhere, and you need to make sure they know how it should look to create that certain feel that you want to communicate as a brand. And then there's the experience part, where you define how do you want people to feel while they are engaging with your product, services, and employees. Do you want them to be relaxed? For example, if you're support a company that offers software and most interactions are with support employees, then of course you want to de-escalate issues. You want to reassure them that everything is fine, that you handle everything. If you're, for example, an app that's more about creativity, you would probably much more like interactions to be enlightening, engaging, or somehow exciting. So that's also something that is partially derived from your brand personality. And it's always great to have written that down. We always tell our clients that nothing they decide in that strategy here has to be set in stone. Everything can be changed later on, but it's really important for the entire, at least executive team, but ideally everyone on the team, to make a decision once and then stick to that, learn, and once you realize the decision wasn't a good fit, adjust that. But at least everyone has talked about it and committed to a certain style. Because I think, and that's what we're always preaching, consistency is one of the biggest factors when it comes to quality and trust. So having written everything down, I think is really, really important. So that's the formulation, also part of the formulation. Of course, your product and the USPs and the pricing are part of your strategy, as well as the audience you would like to talk to. What are the personas? So I guess most of you are familiar with personas. It's a fictitious character that's representing certain target audiences. For example, it's uh, Peter Miller. He's 34. He's into sports. He is outgoing and loves Instagram, for example. And then these personas are all hopefully derived from research and data. And they're interesting or relevant because when you create content or when you come up with campaigns, it's a great tool to look at. It's a great resource to look at to make sure that you know who you're doing it for and who you're dealing with. So it's a great reminder. Also, you would ideally set the markets that you're operating in, because often we hear when you ask, so who's your product, who's your target audience? It's everyone, which is not really great because you can't market to everyone. The more specific, the better. And it's the same with markets. If you can focus on certain markets, or if you at least start with a certain set of markets or one market, it makes it much easier to set up campaigns, create content, create the rest of the strategy, and then execute that, learn, and adjust from there. Also, really important when it comes to the audience is the customer journey. The customer journey starts with not knowing about the problem or the product that you're offering. Then they're having a problem. They're trying to find a solution. They might discover you, hopefully discover you, your products and your services. They're gonna evaluate them. Then they're gonna maybe try. They make the decision to buy, then they use, and maybe later on they cancel. Um, it's like a basic customer journey, might be different for each product, but it's important to know what's the customer journey for your product, your services, and what are the touch points, physical touch points, digital touch points. Where are people researching? Where do people compare you to your competitors, for example? Where do they even discover you? And knowing that really gives a great overview of how people will engage with your products and services. And it's also something that we usually do right in the mind map. And then people in the workshop usually tell us what they think. We try to note that down and then reevaluate afterwards. And often they mention a lot of channels. They often tell us that they have to be omnipresent. And then we also recommend to focus on certain channels, certain aspects. One of the other aspects that needs to be decided, I talked about that before in the analysis, is budget, skills, and time. How much budget do we want to allocate to certain tasks, like, for example, to paid media? How much skills do we have internally? How much skills do we get from external partners? And how much time do we want to put into a certain marketing effort? Then we're going to decide what topics we want to communicate to our audience, and again, on which channels. And the final part that's often neglected is the process. I think marketing shouldn't be fancy voodoo that's just doing stuff and then hopefully, fingers crossed, clients will come. I think it should be a strategic and well-controlled effort. And that means having KPIs and then ongoing on an ongoing basis, measuring those KPIs and then adjusting the things we do, having automation wherever possible, and having a proper process for content creation, editorial, and review. So that's the formulation of the strategy. And the final part after the process, of course, is the execution. I already started to talk about that. You have to have objectives, which is mostly something aspirational, like being the best product, being the best mind mapping app out there. You want to have key results that are measurable, like, for example, 1,000 new users a day. And the thing with key results is they're really tricky to achieve because you often don't know how to get 1,000 new customers a day. So there are key activities, like, for example, running free paid media ads, and hopefully they get you closer to the result. If not, you might want to adjust the activities. And from those activities, you can derive tasks, like, for example, set up meta campaign. And for that, it's it's a mix of OKRs and the 40X framework. And for that, again, mind mapping is the perfect framework because you see at one glimpse what are the objectives, how can you derive results, how can you derive activities and tasks. And often we see there are too many objectives and then too many key results. And again, mind mapping is perfect here because if you see the mind map and you get the feeling it's overwhelming, then the objective and the results, the key results you set are probably unachievable as well, at least for small teams. So that's the final part of building the marketing strategy in mind maps. Everything you can see in that mind map is something that we try to make our clients also put into mind maps, that we put into mind maps at a certain point in time in a workshop with our clients. And it's often really a game changer to get that new perspective and seeing goals, analysis, foundation in a mind map compared to a PowerPoint or Word, for example. And that brings me to the end, actually, of my presentation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. I think there are questions in the chat. I see one question: how do you track results when using mind maps in marketing analysis? It's different. So it depends on what the goals are, and what kind of tools the clients like to work with. We have clients where we create presentations in a mind map every other week to do the reporting. We have clients where we do PowerPoints. We have clients where we do dashboards. It kind of depends on what tools they would like to use and what tools they're using regularly, because they have to open and use that mind map or PowerPoint to analyze it and give feedback. And so it varies, I'd say. I hope that answers your question, Lily. Then the second question is, can mind maps help identify what working and what not in the marketing? It's a good question. I think it can. They definitely can, if you try to do these objectives, key results, key activities within a mind map and then also put in the results. That could work, I think. But again, it kind of depends on what the clients, at least from my perspective, what our clients want. And every one of them needs some kind of different format to really see that something's working or not. The how can mind mapping help me set clear marketing goals question? Again, it's the objective key results. So for I'll give you an example. The objective would be become Europe's biggest agency. And the key result could be, I don't know, have 500 employees. Not that I would like that. I prefer running a medium-sized business. But if that would be your goal, that's definitely measurable. And the key activity then could be either hire 10 employees a month or acquire M&A merge with 3 other agencies. And the task then is you set up LinkedIn campaigns, you go to a job fair, set up booth at job fair, merge with 3 companies. Like, I think you get the idea. There should be something that everyone stands behind, which is the objective. Then there should be something that makes it measurable, and there should be actual tasks that well, in between activities that you can influence, and then there should be tasks that you can assign and delegate to people. And that can be done for either your own company and for business development, or for, in that case, marketing, where you say, become a kick-ass mind mapping app. And the result is 1,000, I think I said that before, 1,000 new customers, and so on. So this could be your framework to set goals and evaluate and see whether, for example, with the 1,000 new customers, run one Facebook ad. If you do that, you will see one Facebook ad probably won't get you 1,000 new customers a day. So you might want to adjust that key activity, might to add more key activities, or adjust that 1 to 100. It's, I think, a really great goal. A goal setting framework. I didn't invent it. It's objectives and key results. You probably know from Google, and the key activity part is from the framework for disciplines of executions. So that's something we usually recommend. And these are very arbitrary, artificial goals that I mentioned here as an example. Once you start to work with clients or your own business, you will see it's actually fairly simple, and you'll come up with a lot of objectives and key results really quickly. And I hope that answers your question, Sharon. And there's one more question about, is there a specific start point and end point in the process? So yeah, the start point, like I said, is having a coffee and starting with the analysis workshop, making sure that they know that they probably don't know everything, and also making sure that they probably haven't formulated every aspect of the strategy. So that's the biggest, that's the start phase, I'd say. And the end phase then is making sure during a presentation and the final workshop that all these decisions in the strategy formulation node have been written down somewhere, that everyone agrees. And then it's mostly an ongoing effort to reach the goals. So there is an end to that initial phase, yes, but no end to the ongoing marketing. Hope that answers the question.